John 6, we see one of the most famous miracles Jesus ever performed, the feeding of the 5,000. But what's easy to miss is how that miracle actually started. It didn't begin with something big, it began with something small. It didn't begin with Jesus doing everything, it began with one disciple choosing to do something. At the center of the moment is Andrew, a guy who rarely gets the spotlight. He's not his brother Peter, he's not Paul, he's not like a New Testament superstar, he's just Andrew, often overlooked. But in this story, he shows us something powerful about how God works. When Jesus sees this massive crowd coming to hear him and be healed by him, he asks, where are we going to get food for all these people? And it's a test. He asks it to Philip, and Philip responds the way I would, you would, most of us would. He calculates. He looks at the numbers, the cost, the impossibility, and says, it can't be done. Andrew, though, responds differently. He doesn't deny that there's a problem. He just brings what he has. He finds a kid who has 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, and he's like, hey, Jesus, here's a little bit of food, but it's not much. I don't know what we can do with it. And there's tension in his statement. There's faith that Jesus can maybe do something, but doubt because, the situation is huge. And it's so real and honest. And it's exactly where most of us live. Andrew brings what he's got, even though he doubts that it's enough, because he understands the ingredients necessary for a miracle. Power, posture, and problem. First, power. Every miracle requires God to do what we can't. That part's non-negotiable. Second is posture. This willingness to trust him, to step forward even when we don't fully understand what he's doing. And third is a problem. No problem, no miracle. But if you have a problem, good news, you have fertile ground for God to do something big. And so the places in your life right now that feel frustrating, the spots where you feel inadequate or stuck, those aren't disqualifiers, they're opportunities for God to move. The problem, though, is that many of us respond like Philip. We analyze instead of act. We choose to calculate instead of participate. We assume nothing can happen because we can't see how it can happen, and so then we do nothing at all. We tell ourselves, I guess I'm just waiting on God. But the reality is sometimes God might be waiting on us. Think of it like this. Imagine someone signs up for a gym membership, pays for it every month, watches workout videos on YouTube, reads about fitness, but never actually shows up at the gym. At some point, you got to look them in the eye and be like, I'm not sure you're waiting to get in shape. You're just kind of avoiding the work it takes to get there. And in a similar way, we're not always just waiting on God. We're avoiding the small steps he's put right in front of us and inviting us to take. Because here's the truth. Most miracles don't happen in an instant. They don't happen overnight. They happen gradually and quietly over time. But over time, small obedience can make a big impact. Look at John 6. Andrew didn't solve the problem. He just responded to Jesus' invitation. He brought what he had. And it kind of feels like every time Andrew shows up in the New Testament, that's what he's doing. He's finding people or things and bringing them to Jesus. That's it. But it's enough because Jesus does the rest. And sometimes in my life, I think the barrier to change is resources. I'm always convinced, I just don't have enough. But what if the barrier isn't resources as much as it is response? Like my lack of response or yours or ours. It's not that we don't have enough a lot of the time. It's that we don't act on what we do have. But if we will act, if we'll bring what Jesus has given us, if we'll hand it back to him, what we'll learn is that Jesus multiplies what we place in his hands. The miracle of multiplying food didn't happen while the food stayed in that kid's lunchbox. It didn't happen while Andrew held onto it. It only happened after it got placed in Jesus' hands. And the same thing's true in our lives. Jesus doesn't multiply what we keep. He multiplies what we surrender. Our culture tells us the good life is found in what we accumulate, but Jesus says it's found in what we release. The meaning isn't about what we get, it's in what we give. And so when you bring your time, your gifts, your resources, your availability, even when they feel small, Jesus uses those things in ways you never could have imagined. But the catch is you got to bring them. You got to release them. You got to trust him with those things. And you got to do that even when you can't see what he's doing with it. Because often we can't understand ahead of time. When it comes to following Jesus, sometimes things look ridiculous before they look miraculous. I mean, imagine being one of the disciples holding a basket with this tiny amount of food, walking toward thousands of hungry people. It had to feel absolutely absurd and risky and probably even embarrassing. That's how I would have felt. I would not have wanted to take that little bit of food. Jesus took 5 loaves and 2 fish, made it into 12 baskets. I would not have wanted to carry my basket out there. But the miracle didn't happen before they carried the baskets into the crowd, before they stepped out. It happened as they did. And that's where we get stuck. We want certainty before obedience. We want God to prove it'll work and show us how it'll work before we take the step. But sometimes we just got to move first and take that step, even when it feels small or uncertain or foolish. Because God meets us on the other side of it when we're willing to trust Him and obey. That's what He did for Andrew. And I think at the end of the day, Andrew's life is a great reminder for us of something simple but powerful. You don't have to be impressive to be impactful. You just have to be available. The miracle isn't in what you have, it's in who you hand it to. And so the invitation this week is simple. Take the next small step. Bring what you have and trust Jesus with it, because when your small obedience meets God's big power, big things happen.